Monkey D. Luffy is the most iconic pirate in the One Piece universe, and one of the forerunners of the worst generation, but what if he fought on the side of justice instead? In today's video, we'll look at how politics, war, and piracy on the Blue Planet would change if Luffy was raised by Marines instead. Now, a few things need to align for this storyline to take place. We know that Luffy is initially raised by his grandfather and the hero of the Marines, Monkey D. Garp. However, in the original storyline, Garp hands Luffy over to Curly Dadan, and Luffy grows up together with Ace. After his encounter with Shanks and losing Sabo, Luffy is inspired to pursue freedom and become a pirate. So in our story, Luffy cannot meet Shanks, and instead, Garp takes a more active role in Luffy's childhood. Thus, Luffy accepts Garp's vision for his future and dreams of upholding justice by joining the Marines. Now, technically, if Luffy doesn't meet Shanks, he won't eat the Gomu Gomu no Mi and gain its powers. However, we'll explore if that's really true a bit later in this video. What we can know for certain is that Garp and the Marines will train him in the use of haki from a very young age, so his skills might just make up for the lack of a devil fruit. Originally, Luffy only begins formally training to use haki under Rayleigh during the 2-year time skip. Given that Luffy is a haki prodigy and Garp is a skilled user of all 3 haki types, Luffy would be ridiculously overpowered if he begins studying under Garp from childhood. With time, Garp notices that Ace is developing dreams of becoming a pirate. Fearing his influence on Luffy and unwilling to lose 2 grandkids to piracy, Garp decides to separate the brothers and raise Luffy on Marineford instead. While training at the Marine headquarters, Luffy begins idolizing superiors like Sengoku and Smoker. While he mourns being separated from Ace, Luffy quickly befriends other young cadets like Helmeppo. The real question here is how Luffy would adapt to the principles of absolute justice. Given his personality, there's no way he follows the same unyielding principles as Akainu. Instead, Luffy will develop his own interpretation of justice, just like Sengoku and Garp. Luffy would believe in free justice, a principle that aims to liberate people from harsh control. But how would Luffy's view of justice go down with the world government? They probably wouldn't even notice while he's a low-ranking officer, so let's have that conversation once he rises through the ranks. When Luffy turns 17, he's sent on his first deployment to East Blue. There he encounters Zoro and learns that he's being unjustly detained. This is when Luffy's rebellious streak is first revealed to the Marines, as he releases Zoro and deliberately picks a fight with his superior Morgan. This incident mostly follows the same path as the original storyline, and Morgan ends up in trouble for his abuses of power. Luffy's actions give Zoro some faith in the Marines, and he decides to continue his life as the pirate hunter from within the Marines, instead of as a bounty hunter. Now, at some point during the East Blue saga, it's likely that Luffy will come across his devil fruit. The reason for this is that the Gomu Gomu no Mi has a mind of its own, and will probably change hands from Shanks at some point in time. Being with the Marines wouldn't change Luffy's ravenous appetite, so he'd still eat the devil fruit. However, his adherence to the principles of justice would prevent Luffy from awakening his devil fruit abilities just yet. Continuing with our storyline, Luffy's next assignment is in Orange Town, where he's assigned to liberate the villagers from Buggy and his crew. Given that Luffy is already a skilled conqueror haki user, this mission is barely a challenge for him as he apprehends Buggy with ease. This also means that Buggy is apprehended by the Marines early on, and even if he still escapes during the Impel Down arc, he would never rise to the status of warlord. During the events of Orange Town, Nami could either be an ally or an informant to the Marines, but she won't be significant to Luffy's story from there onwards until Arlong Park. Luffy arrives at Kokoyashi Village, where he learns that the Arlong pirates have seized control of the Konomi Islands. While this is not an official mission, Luffy uses his authority as a Marine and drags Zoro and Kobe along to investigate. Once at Kokoyashi, Luffy meets Nami once again, who reveals that Arlong is terrorizing the villagers. He directly confronts the Arlong pirates, who try to bribe Luffy, thinking he's a corrupt Marine. This doesn't go down well, however, and Luffy makes swift work of the Arlong pirates. This time, the final battle isn't even close, and Luffy becomes notorious among pirates and Marines alike for his strength. As the story progresses, Luffy reaches the rank of commander by the time the events of the Alabasta arc unfold. He's sent undercover to Alabasta, where he joins Smoker and Tashigi to observe Crocodile. Unlike the Marines in the original storyline, Luffy rushes in headfirst when he learns of Crocodile's plans, totally disregarding his status as a warlord. However, Crocodile is a notch above Luffy's previous adversaries. Crocodile's mastery over his devil fruit abilities puts him on equal footing with Luffy, and the warlord ends up winning their first encounter. Now this is where Nico Robin comes in, because she decides to save Luffy's life so he can fight another day. But why would Robin betray Baroque works to save a Marine? Well, it could be that she sees something different in Luffy because of his willingness to disregard orders from above to save the people of Alabasta. Luffy's second confrontation with Crocodile ends in victory for the Marines, but despite the publicity it gets for the world government, they're not happy with Luffy's insubordination. Upon returning from Alabasta, Luffy is summoned to Marineford to answer for his actions in a formal disciplinary hearing. It's the first time he's called before a high-ranking panel of officers, including Sengoku, Tsuru, and Akainu. While Akainu sees Luffy's actions as outright defiance, Sengoku and Tsuru aren't so sure. They see the same fire that once burned in Garp, so ultimately no punishment is handed down. But from that moment on, Luffy is marked. Some Marines, especially his subordinates, respect him, but others see him as a threat to the order of the Marines. As commander, Luffy's reputation grows. So does the government's interest in controlling him. When his unit arrives at Water 7 to commission a new vessel, they cross paths with CP9. Here, Luffy meets Nico Robin, who had been approached by CP9 in their quest to uncover Pluton. Luffy listens to her story and learns about the government's ruthless pursuit of historic truth. The Enies Lobby incident becomes another defining moment for Commander Luffy. When CP9 captures Robin, Luffy makes the unprecedented move of storming a government judicial island to free her. In the aftermath, Fleet Admiral Sengoku makes a difficult decision. Rather than court-martial the popular commander, he promotes Luffy to captain and assigns him to the far reaches of the Grand Line, effectively exiling him while maintaining his value to the Marines. However, everything changes when Luffy learns that Ace has been captured and sentenced to execution at Marineford. Despite direct orders to maintain his position, Captain Luffy makes the fateful decision to go to Marineford and save his brother. At Marineford, Luffy fights his way through former comrades. The Marines are thrown into confusion as they cannot comprehend one of their own captains openly defying the execution order and fighting alongside pirates. Some Marines stand aside, unwilling to fight Luffy, while others such as Zoro decide to join him. When Luffy finally reaches the execution platform, he confronts Fleet Admiral Sengoku himself, arguing whether this is what he calls justice. This final act of absolute rebellion represents Luffy breaking free of the constraints of the law and awakens the Gomu Gomu no Mi within him. He activates Gear 2 and Gear 3 in quick succession, and combines it with his already refined hockey abilities. Together with Whitebeard, Luffy liberates Ace and escapes until Admiral Akainu, embodiment of absolute justice, is all that stands in his way. In the original storyline, Ace dies shielding Luffy from a lethal magma fist, but in this world, Marine Captain Luffy, with years of disciplined training, sees the attack coming. With his newfound power, Luffy creates an escape route, bouncing Ace and himself away from Marineford amidst the chaos. The Marines are in disarray. A captain with an awakened devil fruit has just defied the world government's absolute justice and escaped with the son of the Pirate King. In the aftermath, Luffy is branded a traitor by some, but others within the Marines begin questioning the rigid justice system that would execute a man simply for his bloodline. Garp was unable to stop Luffy during the fight, and allowed his grandson to knock him out. Thus, Luffy knew he could trust his grandfather, and the two secretly remained in contact following the Marineford War. Garp opens up a new path for Luffy by sending former Rear Admiral X Drake to approach him with a secret proposition. Drake reveals himself as a member of SWORD, a covert Marine unit operating independently from the world government's corruption, dedicated to true justice. SWORD offers Luffy exactly what he's been looking for, a way to uphold justice while fighting the corruption within the system itself. With his awakened Devil Fruit powers and a loyal unit of like-minded former Marines, including Kobe and Helmeppo, Luffy accepts the invitation. And so, Monkey D. Luffy, raised by the Marines but guided by his own unwavering sense of justice, finds his true calling, not as a pirate searching for treasure, but as a SWORD operative searching for truth. So what do you think of this alternate Luffy? Would he eventually leave SWORD as well to join the Revolutionary Army? Or would his destiny lead him elsewhere? Let us know in the comments down below.